What if Aegon VI invaded during the War of the Five Kings? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Aegon VI sits under the Water Garden of Sunspear as he listens to Doran Martell's explanation of what is going on in the Seven Kingdoms. Though the boy has waited nearly 2 decades to make his return, much has happened in the last month that brought him and Jon Connington back to Westeros. Robert is dead, and war has broken out for his successors. So far, 3 men have claimed his throne, and another wishes to declare independence. The Seven Kingdoms are at war with itself, but Dorne has not raised a single sword. Instead, the southernmost region opted for neutrality and sent secret messages to the Golden Company.
You wish to invade the Seven Kingdoms? Well, you are fortunate. This is perhaps the best opportunity to strike. The realm is divided and too busy butchering each other. Already the boy King Joffrey has been weakened by the Lannister defeats in the Riverlands. Meanwhile, Stannis and Renly are on the verge of war. After that, the survivors will be easy to pick off.
It is a sound plan. Once the Golden Company arrives, we can march out immediately.
And when you do, Dorne will be riding at your back, Your Grace. Assuming you agree to our terms.
Yes. In exchange for your swords and spears, I will marry Arianna Martell and make her my queen.
Still, even if we march out, Dorne is not a populous place. Our numbers will be limited, hardly enough to conquer a kingdom.
That is why patience is everything. I have waited 15 years for my vengeance, and you have waited just as long for your return. In these times, the loyalties of nobles are fickle. There will be opportunities to recruit reinforcements. Aegon sees no problem with that, and the oaths are sworn and promises made. Jon then sends a message across the narrow sea to the Golden Company. The time has come to return home. By the time they arrive, Aegon has started assembling in the Boneway. Thousands of Dornishmen who serve in phalanxes, light cavalry, and skirmishers, coupled with the hardened core of the Golden Company. It is a formidable force. Their first target is the Reach, rich and untouched by the war so far. And even better, most of their men are still east, marching for Renly Baratheon. The undermanned fortresses in the marches soon comes under attack. Star Spark and Hornhill both fall under siege, with the former falling to an elephant battering down its gate, while the latter is left encircled by the Dornish. Soon, they begin to carry off the Reach's wealth, taking it back to Dorne to hire more sellswords and recruit more levies. But as they advance deeper, aiming to cut off Renly from Mace Tyrell, word arrives from one of their scouts. Renly Baratheon is dead, killed by his own Rainbow Guard. The men celebrate this news, seeing it as an auspicious start to their campaign, as, for the moment, the Reach will be in chaos, leaving them rich pickings. But Jon Connington sees beyond short-term gains. He sees a way to get an army and more allies. With the younger Baratheon dead, most of his cavalry joined Stannis, but the infantry left behind at Bitterbridge are in chaos. Their lords have either left them or struggled to maintain order. This leaves them in chaos and ripe for the pickings. If Aegon were to recruit them, he would gain the largest army in Westeros. Oberyn advises them to be cautious, though. Mace Tyrell is no friend of Dorne, and he joined this war to put his daughter as queen. But with Aegon, there is no longer an option. If they're going to get the men's allegiance, they must go about it a different way. Fortunately, Mace is not the only Tyrell with a stake in this war. When they arrive at Bitterbridge, they find it in chaos. The castle itself is closed off as Loren Caswell shuts himself inside, and for good reason. Outside, the men are fighting with one another or slipping off in the dead of night. Different factions soon form, some wishing to join Stannis, and others wishing to return home or join the Lannisters. Among the latter is Randyll Tarly and Loras Tyrell, who begin rounding up unruly men-at-arms and putting them to death. But this leaves them unable to react until Aegon's host is right on top of them. Although they are outnumbered by almost 3-1, the Dragon Prince strides into the camp fearlessly, riding under the white banner as he wishes to speak to Lord Tarly and Sir Loras. The two meet them in their pavilion, just as another band of malcontents was being executed.
Now here is a sight I never thought I'd see again. A dragon with his Dornish pets.
Not nearly as strange as a huntsman trapped in his cage. Tell me, what do you hope to accomplish here?
Order, Dornishman. We hope to restore order. Renly might be dead, but I still have my liege lord.
Aye, until he can find another king to sell his daughter to. What did you say, Princeling? Remember that you have not been granted guest right yet. Now give me one good reason why I should not cut you down where you stand.
Tell me, how much did your king mean to you? Clearly quite a bit, since you didn't run off to join Stannis like the rest of your countrymen.
Loras growls and fingers his sword, but Jon stands his ground and crosses his arms. The young knight claims he served out of duty as a member of his Rainbow Guard, but Jon sees right through that. He knows the love of a prince more than anyone, and he suspects that what Loras feels is far more than simple chivalry.
You wish to avenge him, don't you? Then ride with us. We'll ride day and night to King's Landing and crush Stannis and Joffrey. Put Aegon on the throne, and I will see that all of those who wronged you and your house will be punished.
That is not for me to decide, my lord. It is for House Tyrell to decide whether or not they will join you.
It seems like there is a Tyrell right here. What do you say, Sir Loras? Will you wait to find the next king to bow to, or will you join me, one who understands the path to vengeance? By the next morning, Loras pledges the remaining Reachmen to their cause, giving Aegon VI an army as large as Renly's old forces. They waste no time and begin marching out to King's Landing, eager to capture it before Stannis can take the city. They take whatever ships they have available to them and bring their most important troops ahead to try. Meanwhile, in the north, Robb Stark stood over the war map in his tent, candles guttering as dusk fell. Around him gathered his bannermen, Lord Rickard Karstark, Great Jon Umber, and Lord Roose Bolton, their faces taut with concern. The air crackled with wartime urgency. A raven's message lay open in Robb's hands. He took a steady breath before addressing them.
Renly Baratheon is dead,
Robb announced gravely, eyes sweeping the tent. A murmur rippled through the council. The Great Jon's heavy brows shot up in surprise, while Karstark's mouth sat in a grim line. Bolton tilted his head, ever calm, but Robb continued.
Killed at his own camp. The Baratheon brothers were about to join battle. Then some say a shadow slew Renly in his tent. My mother was present, and is returning north. But she's not back yet. We've only whispers to go on.
A shadow? More like Stannis' dagger, I'll wager.
The Red Woman's sorcery, perhaps. Either way, Renly's host is scattered, and that leaves Stannis commanding the Stormlands, and the Reachmen unled. His pale eyes flickered. What of the Tyrells? Did our whispers say what they've done?
Always calculating, Bolton was concerned with the political fallout. Renly's death meant the powerful House Tyrell had to choose a new path. Robb set down the Raven message and nodded.
Yes. According to what little intelligence we have, the Tyrell host quit Renly's camp and rode back to Highgarden. They did not bend the knee to Stannis. There are rumors that the Tyrells are in talks with another claimant.
He hesitated, as if the words were strange on his tongue.
A Targaryen.
That gave even the Great Jon pause. Lord Karstark narrowed his eyes.
Targaryen? The Mad King's line is long dead.
They claim it's Aegon VI Targaryen, the son of Prince Rhaegar, saved from the sack of King's Landing.
He let that sink in. It sounded implausible, yet the whispers came from multiple sources.
He's landed in Westeros, in the Stormlands. He didn't come alone. The Golden Company is with him.
At that, the tent erupted in startled exclamations.
The Golden Company?
Great Jon barked, exchanging a look with Karstark.
Sell swords and exiles. Our word is as good as gold. That lot? I've heard tales of them. Never broken a contract. Until now, it seems. If they're here in Westeros with this boy, they're supposed to be 10,000 strong.
10,000 battle-hardened men, many of them seasoned in Essos. If they've truly come, this is no mere rabble, and they bring war elephants, if the rumors are accurate.
His tone remained cool, but even he allowed a note of wonder. The idea of elephants lumbering across Westeros was astonishing. Such beasts has not been seen in the Seven Kingdoms in living memory.
Reports speak of great beasts in the Stormlands, terrifying the small folk.
Elephants. Now I've heard everything. What will the Southerners think of next? Maybe we'll face dragons and elephants before this war is done.
He meant it as a jest, but no one laughed. The possibility of Daenerys' dragons, however young, joining this Aegon loomed unspoken in their minds. Robb tapped a carved figurine on the map, marking their current position deep in the Westerlands. He was forced to contemplate how this new king's arrival shifted the board.
There's more. It said the Golden Company's banners were seen in the Reach, near Bitterbridge. Tyrells might throw in their lot with him.
Karstark let out an oath.
7 L's. If the Reach in their arms side with the Targaryen boy, the Lannisters will be fighting for their lives on 2 fronts.
His bitterness toward the Lannisters was well known. The deaths of his sons weighed on him. yet even he seemed unsettled by how quickly the landscape of the war was changing.
Your Grace, we should consider what this means for us. The Lannisters will have far more to worry about than just the North and Riverlands. Tywin Lannister may even sue for peace with us if he fears this Aegon and the Reach joining forces. Or he may pull his armies back to protect King's Landing and Queen Cersei's children. Either way, the Lannisters' attention is divided.
Father always taught me not to trust a lion's mercy. Tywin might prefer to make peace with us to secure his rear, but he'd never grant the North independence willingly. Not unless he had no other choice. Robb's youth had been shed by months of war. In his stead stood a hardened young king weighing unprecedented choices. He would not be naive.
Still, this could be the leverage we need. With King's Landing threatened by both Stannis and this Aegon, we have an opportunity.
If you're thinking what I'm thinking, Your Grace, perhaps we let them bloody each other. Stannis, Aegon, Lannisters. Let the Southern Kings hack at one another's throats. Meanwhile, we strengthen our position.
Robb met the Great Jon's eyes and gave a slight nod.
Just so. The landscape has changed. We can't keep pushing west without knowing how these new forces will move. If the Tyrells join Aegon, the Iron Throne's armies may be forced south. We could find ourselves cut off deep in enemy territory, with nothing to show for it if King's Landing falls to someone else.
You propose we pull back?
There was a challenge in his tone, not insubordination, but concern. Robb's cool blue eyes flickered to Karstark.
I know your grief, my lord. I haven't forgotten the cost we've paid in blood. But yes, I propose we fall back from our campaign in the Westerlands for now.
He raised a hand as Karstark began to protest, and the Lord fell silent out of respect.
Our goal has never been to conquer the Westerlands outright. From the looks of it, Joffrey will meet his end, whether by our hand or theirs. We can still use the Kingslayer as a bargaining chip with whichever victor. The wiser move is to secure what we hold, the North and the Riverlands, and not risk our army needlessly.
Bolton gave a thin smile.
A prudent course. Consolidate our strength at Riverrun, perhaps, and fortify Moat Cailin in the neck to guard the way into the north.
He gestured at the map's representation of the Riverlands and the narrow causeway leading into the Northlands.
No southern army can bypass the neck easily. If we hold it, the north is safe from any, be it lion, stag, or dragon.
Roos's words carried a tone of reassurance. Ever the strategist, he was already envisioning new defensive lines.
The Riverlands have bled for our cause as much as the North. We can't leave them undefended either.
Robb nodded firmly.
We'll regroup at Riverrun. Edmure and the Tully Bannermen will aid us in fortifying the region. I'd rather protect our people, both North and Riverlands, from whatever chaos comes out of King's Landing.
With that, the decision was made. The king in the north was showing wisdom beyond his years, prioritizing his kingdom's safety over personal vengeance.
Wise. And Harrenhal may fall into our hands if Tywin moves east. We could take it with minimal force. Perhaps. But first we hold what's ours. The Riverlands and the neck. We make our position so strong no king can break it.
He placed a wolf sigil over Moat Cailin, another on Riverrun.
Send word to Winterfell, and to Lady Mormont, Lord Tarhart. Double the watch at the neck. The north must be secured.
And the Ironborn? You sent Theon to Pike. When do we hear from him?
No word yet. But I still believe in him. He's loyal. He'll bring Balon to our side.
Robb turned to the maester standing by the tent entrance.
Prepare a raven. I'll dictate a message for Theon.
Robb sends a message to Theon, informing him of all that has gone on since his departure, and letting him know the North will be pulling back to fortify their position in the Riverlands in the north, specifically Moat Cailin, the Neck, and Winterfell. Thus, the War Council concluded, Robb Stark and his bannermen steeling themselves for the trials ahead, bound by duty, honor, and the growing legend of the young wolf in a time of wolves, stags, lions, and dragons. In the Crownlands, the air reeks of wildfire. Jon has his men assembled on a nearby ridge, setting up a forward camp as Aegon's army marches up through the Stormlands to reinforce them. He has about 15,000 troops with him now, but even with this formidable army, the one-time hand hesitates and stares at the chaos below him. He was worried about Stannis Baratheon's navy, but now he watches as it burns. Green fire dances across the water, devouring ships in screaming flame. But Stannis' troops are already landing. Thousands of men scramble on shore and claw at the mudgate. Grappling hooks fly, and ladders rise while a battering ram strikes at the gate. It begins to buckle under the pressure, and you can see the men outside just waiting to storm inside.
He's about to win. He doesn't see that he's already lost. Poor lad.
Behind him, the Golden Company waits, silent, disciplined, hungry. The Dornish banners ripple alongside their elephants, and the reachmen shift in uneasy ranks. Aegon sat astride his silver destrier, rain sliding down the scales of his armor. He looks every inch his father's son, Rhaegar reborn, but unbroken.
Signal them. We take the city.
The horns sound, low, deep, and mournful. A death knell. Then the storm breaks. The gates of King's Landing already buckling from Stannis' rams. The men are so eager to come inside that they barely notice the war horns behind them. That is until they hear the shouts and screams of Stannis' rearguard. Roland's storm roars for the men to prepare themselves, but even as they begin to form ranks, they turn and face a wall of Dornish spears. The phalanx holds them in place, pushing them and hitting them hard as the spearmen jab their spears against them. They are like a pincushion, keeping them held in place. But if the Dornish are a careful formation, then Loras is a wild beast. He led the Reachmen in a sweeping charge, swinging his morning star left and right. But the worst of it comes from the other side, where Jon commands the Golden Company. Though they are few, they are all professional soldiers and skilled in tactics and combined arms. While their spearmen present a solid line, their longbowmen rain fire upon them. They hold back the larger Baratheon force for a time. That is, until they open up ranks and let the elephants come crashing through and the Baratheons break. Though Roland's storm tries to hold the line, he cannot stop the elephants, and soon falls. With him, Stannis is cut off and surrounded. Though his men urge him to retreat, he stands till the end. But as he falls, Dornish spearmen and Tyrell rebels pour through the breach. The first of these is Loras Tyrell, who charges in. The Lannister garrison, confused and cornered, barely knows who to fight. Red cloaks fall beside Baratheon's men. No one is spared. Aegon rides in beneath the dragon banner, untouched by fire, untouched by fear. Jon follows close behind as they do not stop until the Red Keep. By the time they arrive, Loras Tyrell comes out, bloodied but standing. He carries Joffrey's crown and throws it at Aegon's feet.
King's Landing is yours, your grace. A shame that I could not cut Stannis down, too. You've done well. Renly's ghost would be pleased. I think perhaps we have found our new Lord Commander.
But as they secure the city, they know they cannot rest easy. From beyond, Tywin Lannister remains. The next morning, the real war arrives. Tywin Lannister marched from the west with 20,000 strong. Armored knights, veteran killers, gold-armored and blood-tested. These were not fresh recruits or half-trained levies. They were the survivors of the Riverlands campaign, of the West's retaliatory raids. They had sacked, butchered, and burned under Tywin's cold command. Though Joffrey and Cersei might be dead, he still rode to avenge them, not for love, for legacy, for Lannister pride. No slight against House Lannister went unpunished, especially one that left his blood spilled across the streets of the capital. Atop the battlements of King's Landing, Jon Connington stood beside Aegon Targaryen, watching the dust rise from the western horizon. Jon's fists were clenched behind his back. He could still see Tywin's sneer, a contempt in his eyes when he exiled Jon. The memory burned alongside the image of Rhaegar's broken body, Elya's shattered skull, the crushed bones of the infant princess who shared Aegon's name. Not again, Jon thought. This time, fire answers gold. Aegon's eyes were calm, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword.
He'll come hard and fast. He means to break us before we entrench. Then we'll break him instead.
Jon mounted his horse, drawing his sword with a hiss of steel. The sun glinted off the blade. Below, the ranks of the Golden Company assembled in formation, spears in hand, shields raised, banners whipping. Beside them, Reachmen and Dornish levies formed their lines, bolstered by fresh troops from the fertile heartlands and the dry deserts alike. Trumpets called. The gates of the city opened. Jon Connington rode out at the head of the host. Behind him came the Golden Company, a league veterans with weathered faces and grim eyes. Elephants followed, massive beasts clad in plate, their tusks shod and still. Dornish archers took positions along the ridges. The Reach Knights followed in glittering columns, banners of green and gold streaming in the wind. When the lion clashed with the dragon, the land screamed. The Lannister vanguard smashed into the Dornish lines first, led by Sir Gregor Clegane, a mountain of meat and madness.
He cut through the skirmishers like wheat, his greatsword crashing through men and armor alike. Spears glanced off him. Blood flew in arcs behind his steed. A Dornish captain tried to rally his men, was cleaved in two. Gregor didn't stop. The Dornish flank began to buckle, but the Golden Company held the center, and the Reachmen began sweeping their far sides, disrupting Lannister cohesion. Rain of arrows fell from Dornish ridges, and horses screamed as barbed shafts found joints in Lannister plate. Jon rode among the elephants, directing their push.
Hold the left. Drive the center. Break their line before they can regroup.
The ground trembled as elephants charged, shaking the Lannister center. Shields splintered, horses fell, and men scattered in panic. In the confusion, Jon saw Tywin, surrounded by his guard, golden lion on his breastplate, sword drawn. For a moment, time slowed. Their eyes met. Tywin remained still, impassive, as if nothing around him mattered. He said something to a bannerman. The soldier nodded and turned to rally the men. Tywin began riding forward with chilling calm. Jon angled toward him, cutting down a knight in his path. He would end this today. But before Jon could close the distance, a roar sounded from the far right. Sir Gregor Clegane was still tearing through the Dornish skirmishers, his armor soaked in blood. He spotted another man approaching, spear in hand, light on horseback, riding straight at him with a grin. Doran Martell. The Red Viper pulled his horse to a stop a dozen paces away and twirled his spear lazily.
You remember me, don't you?
Gregor didn't answer, just raised his sword.
Of course you do. You remember her. You remember Elia. You crushed her skull with your bare hands.
He spurred forward. Gregor met him in a thunderous charge. The first pass was a blur, Oberyn's spear grazing Gregor's side, Gregor's blade just missing his throat. They wheeled, came again. The second pass saw sparks fly as the spear scraped armor, but Oberyn was faster, more precise.
Say her name!
Gregor snarled and swung. Oberyn ducked, struck his horse's legs. The beast collapsed, throwing Gregor to the dirt. The crowd of soldiers began to part around them, giving the two men space. On both sides, the battle slowed as word spread. The Mountain and the Viper, a reckoning long overdue. Gregor rose slowly. Oberyn circled him, spear tip flicking.
You raped her. You murdered her. You killed her children. Say it.
Gregor charged. Oberyn dodged and drove his spear into Gregor's shoulder. Blood sprayed. The Mountain roared and swung, missing by inches. Another jab, another slice. Oberyn moved like a shadow, his spear dancing. Gregor stumbled. Oberyn stood tall, eyes ablaze.
You die in the dirt, just like she did.
One final thrust, and the spear drove through Gregor's chest just beneath the collar. The Mountain collapsed. The Viper stood over him, chest heaving. As Gregor fell, the Lannister morale cracked. Jon shouted for the final charge.
Now! Write them down!
The Reach cavalry surged into the flanks. Dornish arrows flew. The Golden Company parted ranks, and the elephants charged again, trumpeting like gods of war. The Lannister center shattered. Jon's blade was red before he reached Tywin. Tywin had dismounted. His men were dead around him. His horse lay with a spear in its belly. Still, the old lion stood proud, his sword raised.
No more heirs. No more crowns. Just you.
You were always weak. Rhaegar's lapdog. Still licking boots.
And you were always a coward. You let the Mountain do your butchering. You hid behind Gregor, behind gold, behind the boy king.
I ruled a kingdom. What will you rule? Graves.
Jon stepped forward.
No. A better world.
Tywin raised his sword, and Jon knocked it aside. They fought for moments. Tywin parried well for a man of his age, but Jon was faster, younger, and burning with 20 years of betrayal. Tywin fell to one knee. Behind them, the earth trembled, an elephant crashing through the broken ranks. Jon stepped back just as the beast thundered past. Its foot came down on Tywin Lannister's chest, cracking ribs, twisting golden armor, crushing the lion beneath its weight. Silence fell. Jon stared at the broken body, panting.
This time, the dragon wins.
3 days later, the smoke still lingered over King's Landing. Aegon Targaryen stood in the great hall of the Red Keep, the Iron Throne behind him, newly draped in black and red. His armor was polished, his cloak regal, black silk embroidered with a golden comet and three-headed dragon. Surrounding him stood lords of the Reach, Dorne, and Stormlands. Behind them, the battered but unbowed Golden Company. Doran Martell, bruised but alive, held the crown. Lord Redwyne stepped forward. Randall Tarley knelt. Loras Tyrell laid Renly's green cloak at Aegon's feet. Lord Harlaw of the Isles, one of many seeking favor, proclaimed him king.
I swear to rule justly, to rebuild what war has broken, and to remember the names of those who fell so I might rise.
He knelt, and Oberyn placed the crown on his head. Aegon VI Targaryen, king of the Seven Kingdoms. The hall erupted in cheers. The sound echoed off stone, off centuries of conquest and rebellion. In the shadows, Jon Connington watched. In 5 Blackfire rebellions, not a single one had succeeded. But this was real. In under a year, they had done what centuries of exiles, schemers, and dreamers had failed to do. 3 kings were dead. 1 stood tall. And there was only one left, in the cold, quiet north. Their victory will not be complete until they defeat Robb Stark and any other rebel. Yet they know this will not be easy. Robb managed to best Tywin Lannister in battle. That is something Jon Connington cannot ignore. He also has fresh troops, fortified Riverrun and the north, a nearly impossible task for the Targaryen king. The air in the chamber is thick with incense and tension. Dust hangs in golden shafts of light. Aegon VI sits at the head of the table, his crown set beside him, his eyes trained on the carved map of Westeros as he discusses with his small council.
Our banners fly from the Dornish marches to the Red Keep. The lion is dead, the stag gutted, but the wolf still howls, and he howls from behind stone and snow. Robb Stark holds Riverrun, Moat Cailin, and every road worth marching through. He's not just surviving, he's readying.
The boy knows war. That much is clear. He's young, but not reckless. Every path north is blood and bramble, and winter is not far off.
The North doesn't need to defeat us. They only need to outlast us. Then we don't march north. We break the North from within. Every man has a price, especially the ones whose pride is bigger than their honor. You speak of the Boltons. I speak of the Boltons. The Freys. The Umbers. Any house whose loyalty frays when gold or survival beckons. I fought in the south when the North rose for Robert. They're proud, yes, but they're not unbreakable. The North is held together by one name. Stark. Remove that, and the wolves turn on each other. Then perhaps we don't need to kill Robb Stark. Just isolate him. It would have helped to use the girl, Sansa, as a bargaining chip. But we haven't seen her since the battle's end. She vanished in the chaos.
All eyes shift.
Still, send terms. Not a threat, a letter. Generous, respectful, honorable. A marriage alliance, even. Robb will see it for what it is. A test of loyalty. So will his bannermen. And if he refuses, he will. But some of his lords may not. And if they fracture, the North bleeds itself.
We cut off the wolf's tail before we go for the throat.
I'll not march blind into the snow, but make no mistake, the North will bend the knee.
The raven came at dusk. It bore the seal of House Targaryen, 3-headed and crimson, pressed into dark wax. The parchment smelled faintly of ash and smoke. The stone walls carried the scent of damp river air and smoke from the hearth. Robb Stark broke the seal with steady fingers as his bannermen gathered at Riverrun's great hall. He read the letter in silence. When he looked up, all eyes turned to him. Lord Karstark grim and silent, Great John Umber restless with clenched fists, Roose Bolton pale and unreadable, Sir Wendell Manderley tall and tight-lipped. Lady Mage Mormont stood by the window, arms folded, her face half lit by firelight. Robb laid the parchment on the map table.
Aegon Targaryen sends his regards.
He tossed the letter onto the map table. Jon Connington's seal adorned the corner. The murmuring began before he finished the sentence. Robb raised a hand. The hall fell quiet.
He offers peace, a royal pardon. The Riverlands reorganized as part of the North. Sansa returned, and the North left to govern itself. In exchange, we bend the knee.
Rickard Karstark spat and growled.
Peace? From a dragon prince who marched elephants through King's Landing? Let him send peace to the Dreadfort and see how Roose takes it.
Roose's face remained still.
It's a generous offer. More generous than I expected. He offers your sister. That's no small gesture, especially if she still lives.
And why do you think that is? The South is in chaos. He offers peace, not for mercy, but from strategy. He bleeds. He fears the North.
Perhaps. Or perhaps he truly seeks stability. He is young. He fought against Stannis and Tywin, and he won.
He's not our king. You are.
Robb turns and stares off into the distance.
I swore I would never kneel to a southern king. Not Joffrey, not Renly, not Stannis. Not even a Targaryen reborn in golden armor.
Then we tell the bastard to come try and take the North.
A long silence, but Robb didn't speak. His eyes were on the flames.
I'll write him back. Not in defiance, in truth. The North does not kneel. Let him know we stand ready to defend what is ours. The North is not part of his 7 kingdoms. Not anymore.
Far to the west, the Raven reached Pike. Theon Greyjoy stood on the jagged stone steps outside his father's hall, watching the storm clouds roll in over the sea. Salt spray touched his face. His fingers trembled slightly as he broke the seal and unrolled the parchment. He reads it once, twice, then again a third time. Brother, it began. No one had called him that in a long time. Robb's hand was in the ink, his voice in the words. It spoke of retreat, of fortifying the neck, of Winterfell, of Aegon's rise, of war elephants and Tyrell's flying Targaryen banners, of a new world being born, and the need for the North and Iron Islands to stand together, not as raiders and reavers, but as allies. Robb offered him a place, not as a ward, not as a hostage, but as a brother. Theon folded the letter carefully, then tucked it inside his tunic and turned to walk inside. Balon Greyjoy sat beneath a rusted iron chandelier, one hand gripping a cup of black wine. Salt air whistled through the narrow window. The smell of dead fish clung to everything.
You read it?
He asks without looking up.
I did.
And?
He asks for an alliance, not as subjects, as equals.
Stuck words, made soft by the cold.
He offers trade, ships, power, recognition of your rule in the Isles.
Balon looks up after that remark.
He offers, does he?
Theon stood straighter.
We could rule the Western Sea, Father, with the North behind us.
We do not need the North,
he snapped.
We take what is ours. That's what I taught you. That's what you forgot when you lived among the wolves.
Theon's jaw clenched, his heart pounding.
I didn't forget. I remember Winterfell. I remember the Godswood, the laughter, the day the wolves protected their own.
He stepped forward.
Robb is not perfect, but he is just. He offered us a future.
And I offered you a kingdom. Or at least I did.
He stood up.
If you leave now, you are no son of mine.
Theon stood frozen. A choice. He could ride the waves as the Ironborn heir, or he could serve the friend who grew up with him. The war horns of old called it his blood, but so did something deeper. The hearth of Winterfell, the laughter of wolves. In the end, Theon turned, walked from the hall, and never looked back. The chamber was warm, but the air still felt sharp. Aegon stood beside the tall, narrow window, one hand braced against the stone, staring out toward Blackwater Bay. The morning sun glinted on the water, but the news delivered that morning had darkened his mood. Behind him, Jon Connington sat at the long table of carved oak, hands clasped, eyes cast low in thought. Varys stood in the corner, his slippers silent on the velvet carpet, the soft swish of his robes the only sound in the room. The letter lay between them, parchment still creased, with the wolf seal broken. Aegon's eyes scanned the letter a second time with sharp calculation.
As expected, but there may be more hidden between the lines. The Starks claim to hold, but they forget the people they rely on to keep their hold firm.
Aegon looked to Varys.
What have you heard?
Varys gave a thin smile.
The Freys are insulted, forgotten. They remember the king in the North's broken promise. Lord Walder's daughter still sits unwed, yet was supposed to be married to Robb Stark at the war's conclusion. The Boltons see opportunity. Roose sends few ravens but listens to many. Divide them, your grace, and the wolf will stand alone.
Aegon turned to the fire.
Then have it done. We'll send messengers, not soldiers. Yet.
In the Riverlands, winter began to creep. It came not with blizzards or whiteouts, but with a hush, a silence more ominous than any storm. The winds were colder, the daylight shorter. The birds no longer sang above the red fork. The trees, stripped bare, groaned in the night. The rivers iced at their edges and slowed to a mournful trickle. A feast was held at the Twins. Under banners of gray and red, Lord Walder welcomed Roose Bolton with wine and suspicion. They dined not in the main hall, but in a smaller solar above the kitchens, the ceiling low and smoky. Only the hearth gave light. The long table was set for two. The food was warm, the wine bitter, the silence worse. Roose Bolton carved his meat with gloved hands, methodically, while Lord Walder watched him through half-lidded eyes, his jowls sagging like melting wax.
"You're quiet tonight, Lord Bolton."
I speak when I have something worth saying.
"And here I thought you'd come all this way to make amends, not chew your mutton like a corpse."
Roose didn't answer. He sipped his wine, eyes unreadable. Walder's tone soured.
"Don't take me for a fool. I know why you're here. Your wolves are pulling back from the west. Half your men withdrawn from Mount Caelan. And the boy, he hasn't written in weeks. Not a raven, not a word. That's not how kings treat their allies."
I came to speak of allies, yes.
Walder laughed, but it was a dry barking sound.
"Oh, and what's left to speak of? I gave my word, and he gave me silence. I gave my daughters, and well, he hasn't refused them. Not yet. But not a name, not a ceremony, not even a courtesy visit. He thinks he's too good for the phrase, does he?"
Roose set down his goblet, eyes catching the firelight.
He thinks many things, not always the right things.
Walder leans forward in his seat.
"And you? Do you still call him your king?"
Roose didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the inner pocket of his cloak and slid a small folded parchment across the table.
"What's this?"
My reply to a letter I received from King's Landing.
"The boy king?"
Roose said nothing. Walter opened the parchment, scanned it. His eyes moved slower the further down he read. He folded it again, slowly, methodically, and set it aside. The fire crackled.
"Aegon.
The realm has a new king.
And you've already bent the knee."
I have made arrangements. My son will have the Dreadfort, perhaps more. The North needs strong blood to survive what's coming.
"And what do I get? Scorned daughters? An empty gate? You'd have me stand aside while the boy tramples south and leaves the rest to his elephants and sellswords?"
Roose looked at him now, directly.
No, I'd have you share in the spoils. He offers you to the Riverlands in exchange for a single task.
"Slit the pup's throat."
Or open the gates. Let the South bleed him. All Aegon needs is a breach. You're already halfway there.
Walder's face twisted in thought. A moment passed, then another. A knock broke the silence. The steward entered, bowed deeply, and held out a raven scroll with a red dragon seal.
My lord, a raven, from King's Landing.
Walder took it. He read it in silence. When he finished, he chuckled, then laughed, a wheezing, broken thing that echoed like a cough.
"7 L's. The same bloody words, the same bloody offer. Does he send them all out at once?"
It means he expects us to be loyal.
"He's a child."
He's a king.
"And what of Stark? If he still weds my daughter, if he still holds Riverrun?"
He's losing the Riverlands by the day. The Tullys are loyal, but they're bleeding. His wolves are tired. His allies have gone quiet. And if he still marries your daughter, you gain a wolf for a son-in-law and a corpse for a throne.
Walder sipped his wine. It tasted stronger than before.
"I never liked him. Too noble. Like his father, always thinking honor is armor."
Honor is a blade turned inward. Cuts the hand that holds it.
The old man leaned back and stared into the fire. His eyes gleamed.
"If I do this..."
You won't have to lift a sword. Just open your gates, close your doors, and wait.
Walder smiled.
"It's always the waiting that kills."
Not this time.
The phrase would open the gates when the time came. Roose would open the neck, and when the north was broken, each would rule their half in Aegon's name. Robb stood in Winterfell's Godswood, beneath the red leaves of the weirwood, Greywind pacing in the snow and his mother at his side. A scout from Riverrun arrived, frostbitten, breathless, and pale.
My lord, the Bolton's forces have begun withdrawing from Mount Caelan. They said the Dreadfort has recalled its riders, and the twins have closed the gates and doubled the sentries.
Robb didn't speak. Not yet. The scout fumbled with the scroll, black ribbon still crusted with frost.
We intercepted a courier, south of the Red Fork, headed for King's Landing. He bit out his own tongue before capture, but not before this was found.
Robb took the scroll. He scanned its documents with visible rage in his eyes. Greywind sits at his feet and whimpers. He looked at Catelyn, who saw the change in his eyes before the words even left his lips.
They mean to carve up the north, Bolton and Frey, in the name of the dragon.
Catelyn's lips parted, but she said nothing. Robb stepped closer to the weirwood, letting the bark press against his gloved palm.
My father once told me, when a man betrays you with silence, it screams louder than words. Roose said nothing. Walder said less. They waited. They conspired.
His voice hardened.
They mean to wait until the enemy is upon us, and then let them right in.
Then don't give them a chance.
He looked at her now. Truly looked, as if weighing something beyond just strategy. He nodded. That night, Winterfell did not sleep. No horns were sounded, no banners raised, but riders were summoned, arms distributed, maps unfurled. Great Jon Umber arrived in a storm of snow and curses. Galbraith Glover rode in from Deepwood with a grim expression. Maid Mormont arrived with only 12 spears, and a promise that more would follow if needed. Rickard Karstark groaned as if he knew it was coming. In the great hall before the hearth, Robb stood.
The Freys think us cowards. Boltons think us fools. They mean to break us in half. But wolves do not break. We bite.
He looked to his bannermen.
We ride tonight with a small force. No drums, no trumpets. Only speed and silence. The twins must be dealt with.
And Roose?
Leave him to the snows. If he flees, he'll be caught. And if not, then we'll bury him ourselves.
At dawn, they rode. Robb led them through flurries and fog, flanked by Greywind and a dozen of his finest men. The rest followed a day behind, careful and quiet. They reached the Green Fort by dusk, the waters sluggish with ice, the twins rising on either side. They came not as kings or lords, but as shadows in the snow. Robb Stark led them. No crown, no sigil, only his sword, Greywind, and the weight of betrayal on his shoulders. They approached the lesser gate of the twins through the marshes, faces streaked with ash, blades wrapped in cloth to dull the sound. The 4 Frey guards posted there never saw the strikes coming. One was strangled in silence, another's throat sliced open before he could scream. The snow drank the blood. They slipped inside, splitting into teams. Karstark and Umber made for the towers, slicing sentries and cutting down those who stirred. Glover and his men broke into the granary and stables, dragging barrels of pitch from the storage and sloshing lamp oil across the hay and timber. Robb himself led the team that secured the central bridge. Its underframe wooden, its supports soaked in tar. When the signal came, a hawk's cry from the north tower, torches were lit and dropped without hesitation. Flames roared to life beneath the Frey's feet. By the time the main hall stirred, the yard was already choking in smoke. Tower doors jammed, stairwells collapsed in flames, and as guards scrambled to organize, Umber and Karstark barred the exits with corpses. It wasn't a siege, it was a culling. The twins didn't fall that night, they were gutted from within. The flames lit the sky for miles. From the wooded ridge east of the twins, Sansa pulled her cloak tighter. Snowflakes melted on her lashes as she stared at the towers burning across the river. She said nothing. Beside her, Arya Stark watched with fists clenched. Her face was hard, too hard for a girl her age. Sandor Clegane, leaning against a tree, grunted.
That ain't no Targaryen fire. Wolves did this.
Then, hooves. Steel. Shapes cutting through the smoke. Out of the haze, Robb Stark rode alone. Cloak torn, sword sheathed, eyes rimmed red from smoke and vengeance. He halted when he saw them, eyes locking first with Arya's, then Sansa's. No one spoke. Arya was the first to move. She ran, not like a lady, but like a Stark, straight to his arms. Robb dropped to his knees as she crashed into him.
You burn them. You burn the Freys.
It's good to see you too. I had to.
Sansa stepped forward slower, uncertain, but when Robb opened his arms, she went. The three held each other in the snow, silent, as the twins burned behind them. The Hound watches for a moment, then turned away.
Stupid bloody wolves, always finding each other.
Thank you, Clegane. You've done me a deed which can never be repaid. You're free to stay in the north as long as you please.
Roose Bolton was dealt with soon after. He fled with what men he could, but the north was done with traitors. His own men turned on him, giving his head to the king in the north, hoping they and their families would be spared. Robb returned to Riverrun with fire in his blood, and Greywind beside him. He's greeted by Theon, who tells him what occurred in the Iron Islands, and apologizes for not being able to secure his father's ships. Robb is happy to have his friend by his side, and for his loyalty, puts him in charge of what remains of the twins, while Howland Reed was placed at the neck. The wolves were back together, and had finally struck. In King's Landing, the chamber was warm, but the air still felt sharp. Aegon stood beside the tall, narrow window, one hand braced against the stone, staring out toward Blackwater Bay. The morning sun glinted on the water, but the news delivered that morning had darkened his mood.
So he burns the twins. He did not hesitate. No parley, no warning. The Freys are gone. Poetic, some would say. Lord Walder played all sides for too long. In the end, he was left with none. And Bolton?
Dead. His men turned on him while crossing the White Knife. His head was returned to the young wolf. The north bleeds, yes, but not for Robb Stark.
Aegon walked to the table and read the letter again, slowly this time. His fingers drummed against the wood.
Quite the reply. Words are just wind. Fire is final. Indeed. He sent a message the realm will hear far louder than parchment ever could. He does not see you as a king to treat with. He sees a conqueror to resist.
A moment of silence passes between them. The only sound was the crackling of the brazier in the hearth.
Did we force his hand? Was it wrong to offer terms to the Freys and Boltons? No. It was right to offer them, but it was also within his right to do what he did. You have extended your hand, your grace. Let the realm see it was bidden. Now, when the dragon unsheathes its claws, people will not call it cruelty, only necessity. I don't want to be feared. No king does. But they must be feared, at least once, if they are to be loved forever.
Just then, a guard bursts in, pale and shaking.
Your Grace, a fleet was seen off the stepstones, flying the banner of your house, banners, Your Grace. It was said the sky above them burned with dragonfire.
Aegon freezes. Everyone stares. The firelight in the room flickers violently.
So the rumors are true. She's come. Who? Your aunt. The dragon.
The wind at Blackwater Bay howled beneath a storm-gray sky as the great black sails of Daenerys Targaryen's fleet cut through the churning water. Her banner flew high, a red dragon on black, and behind her ships, 3 shadows circled overhead. Dragons. They descended like fire-made flesh, banking above the sky and soaring toward King's Landing. On the battlements of the Red Keep, small folk and gold cloaks alike looked skyward in awe and terror. The shadow of Drogon passed over the city and blotted out the sun. By the time Daenerys' ships reached the docks, a contingent of Unsullied lined the piers. Grey Worm disembarked first, silent and sharp-eyed, forming ranks with practiced precision. Beside him walked Ser Jorah Mormont and Ser Barristan Selmy, old scars and old vows carried on weary shoulders. Daenerys stepped down last, her silver hair braided, her cloak lined with fur from the Far East. Aegon met them in the throne room. He stood at the foot of the Iron Throne, flanked by Jon Connington, Randyll Tarly, Varys, and Doran Martell. He did not sit. He wore no crown. The banners of Targaryen black and red hung above them. Tense quiet held the chamber as Daenerys entered, her retinue behind her.
Welcome to King's Landing, Daenerys.
King's Landing, is it?
Her tone was measured. Her eyes were not.
It is. By conquest and by claim.
Daenerys stepped forward, each footfall deliberate. She scanned the room. The throne, the faces, the dragon sigils draped upon the walls.
You wear my house's colors. You fly my house's banner. Yet I do not know your face.
I am Aegon, son of Rhaegar, your nephew.
Silence. Daenerys' jaw tightened.
My brother's son died in the sack of King's Landing, murdered by Gregor Clegane. I remember the stories. I remember the blood.
he was saved, switched at birth. Elia's babe was lost, but the true son of Rhaegar was spirited away.
Barristan Selmy stepped forward now, his gaze sharp.
I served your father. I served Rhaegar. And I know Elia. She would never give up her child.
Daenerys looked back at Aegon. Her voice was softer, but not warmer.
If you are truly my blood, then why not send a raven? Why march with armies and elephants? Why crown yourself before meeting me?
Because the realm was in chaos. I did what I had to restore peace, as any Targaryen would.
Restore peace? You've let the Seven Kingdoms devolve into 5. No, as any conqueror would.
A long silence falls between them.
There is no peace in this, no unity. Only another pretender seated on a throne of knives.
Jon Connington's hand twitched at his sword, but Aegon raised a hand to stop him.
You would make war?
I would make truth, and truth begins with blood. Show me the proof, Aegon, or get out of my way.
Varys stepped forward.
Perhaps we take time. Speak more. Clarify histories.
Daenerys turned toward the eunuch, eyes hard.
Your webs will not catch me, spider.
She turned, cloak sweeping behind her.
I will not fight a war for a stolen name. I will go to Dragonstone. When I return, it will be as a queen, or with fire.
She walked out of the throne room without another word. Her dragons roared above, and for the first time since taking King's Landing, Aegon Targaryen felt the cold edge of uncertainty cut through the crown he had earned with blood. Rumors of dragons spread throughout Westeros, even as far as the Riverlands in the north. As the North has done all throughout these wars, they decide to stay neutral and let the South rip themselves to shreds. Time passes, and neither Targaryen will relent. Sir Barristan and Ser Jorah try to convince Daenerys there can be peace, but she will hear none of it. They even suggest the two wed each other, like the Targaryens of the past. But this only angers Daenerys, as she does not accept Aegon as a true Targaryen. He does not have their silky white hair, nor any of their features. Aegon's counselors urge him the same. While Aegon is open to the idea, as it will ease their path of bringing the North back into the fold, Daenerys doesn't give it a thought. It is clear now the Iron Throne will be decided through blood and fire. Dragons against elephants. Targaryen versus Targaryen. The battle for King's Landing began at dawn. Aegon stood atop the battlements of the Red Keep, his silver armor glinting beneath a sun rising red. The Blackwater Bay shimmered with unnatural calm. Jon Connington stood beside him, face carved from stone. Varys remained in the shadows, watching the horizon. And then came the roar. 3 shadows passed over the city. Dragons. The people below screamed as the beasts soared overhead, trailing fire and fury. Drogon led the vanguard, black as ash and twice as hot. Rhaegal and Viserion flanked him, wings tearing through the sky like war banners. Ships from Dragonstone filled the bay, sleek and black, their sails bearing the 3-headed dragon of old. At their prow stood Daenerys Stormborn, silver hair loose, her eyes fixed on the city her ancestors built. Ballista turned skyward. Archers scrambled to their towers. Aegon gave no command. He simply watched. The first bolt missed. The second did not. It struck Rhaegal's flank. He screamed, dipped, then recovered. Then the fire came. King's Landing had not seen such flames since the Mad King's death. Drogon lit the southern towers. Viserion bathed the Black Gate in searing heat. Rhaegal, despite his wound, swept over the harbor, turning warships to floating pyres. On the ground, Daenerys' Unsullied surged through the broken gates, shields locked, spears thrusting. Behind them came the Dothraki, screamers on horseback, blades glinting red. The Golden Company held the inner walls, elephants snorting, banners raised. Jon Connington led the charge to hold them, but the tide was already turning. Aegon mounted his horse, sword drawn.
I won't flee my city. Then we die in it.
The Golden Company formed a phalanx at the base of the keep. Dornish bowmen loosed arrows at the sky. Reach Knights held the plaza. It was orderly, disciplined, but it didn't matter. The dragons came. Drogon landed on the southern wall and swept it with flame. Rhaegal dove toward the courtyard, scattering the ranks with a single pass of fire. Viserion circled the Tower of the Hand and brought it crashing down. Doran Martell was struck from his horse by falling rubble. Randall Tarley rallied men near the main gate before being caught in the blast of dragon flame. His shouts turned to ash. Jon Connington tried to hold the steps of the Red Keep with what remained of the Golden Company. The elephants, brave as they were, screamed as they burned, their steel tusks glowing hot as coals. They fought in the shadow of the throne, in the courtyard below the Red Keep. Aegon dueled Grey Worm himself, blades flashing. Neither gave ground, but a dragon's scream turned the tide. Drogon landed on the upper courtyard, fire boiling in his throat. Grey Worm disengaged. Aegon stood, bloodied, breathing hard, and looked up. Daenerys descended from the dragon's back like a wraith of fire.
You are no dragon.
Aegon tried to answer, but the heat beat him back.
You are a pretender.
Jon Connington moved to shield Aegon, but the dragon roared. The flames never touched Aegon. Drogon stepped short, smoke curling from his maw. Daenerys stared, then turned.
Chain them. Both. I want the round to see what I've spared.
By nightfall, King's Landing belonged to Daenerys Stormborn. Weeks passed, the ashes settled, the bells tolled again. Aegon was not executed. Instead, he was exiled, sent across the sea with Jon Connington at his side. Varys vanished before the city fell. Daenerys claimed the Iron Throne. Ser Barristan stood by her side. Ser Jorah became her hand. The Unsullied kept order. The dragons circled above. But the realm was not whole. The North had not bent the knee, and so a raven was sent. Robb Stark received it at Winterfell. Snow beginning to fall. The letter was simple.
The wars are over. Let peace begin. Join me, and the North may rule itself as it always should have. Marry me, and we join ice and fire in truth.
He looked at his bannerman.
She doesn't ask for my sword. She asks for my name.
All were in agreement. The offer was too good to pass up, and after all the fighting in the realm, it was a relief for most. Nobody wanted war with dragons, and so the wolf and the dragon wed beneath the heart tree in Winterfell. The North remained proud, the South remained quiet, but for once the realm was not broken, only bruised, and from that union a new age dawned, the Age of Restoration. The wars of 5 kings ended with 1 queen, Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of chains, and Robb Stark, king consort of the North. Together they ruled, fire and snow, dragon and wolf, and peace, for once, held. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.